At least 3 African governments have blocked the internet in the last few days. In Sudan, this has been happening as people are holding anti-government demonstrations. Videos shared by Sudanese show that these protests led to violent clashes. Gabon also blocked internet services after the coup attempt that took place a few days ago. And here in Southern Africa's development community, the Democratic Republic of Congo experienced the same as citizens were waiting for the announcement of their new president after last week's elections. Well, to talk about internet blockages in Africa, Siphumelele Zondi is one of our senior producers and anchor of the technology news program. My brother, it's so sad, but this is something that we see quite a lot. Governments blocking internet usage. I remember a few years ago, even in Mozambique, the mobile operators were told shut down SMSing and people to be able to send messages. Why do they do this? What is going on? Unfortunately,
as you say, Peter, it seems to be a common story all across the African continent. In the DRC in the past, we spoke to Vodacom on why they abide by that, by their request when they are asked by the government of the DRC, because it's not the first time it's happening in the DRC. It's happened when there were anti-government protests there, and Vodacom's response was according to DRC law, you can be requested and you should abide by it, otherwise your license could be revoked. So it's pretty much, I suppose they abide by it because of business, really. Because if they don't do it, then the government of that particular country can kick them out of the country and out of operating from the country. So
the consequence for the citizens is what?
And it actually is dire, because what you find is that when there are times of elections, for example, in the DRC this time around, they voted on the 30th of December, 31st of December, the internet is shut down. There's no information. You can't share information with your friends and relatives and other people. You can't get any news if you live outside the country and you are WhatsApping your relatives. You don't know what's going on with your relatives, the health status of your relatives. Over there as well, people who have small businesses have also been complaining, because if you have a business that relies on, in fact, just about every business needs the internet nowadays, you can't communicate with your customers, you can't access your bank account. There's a lot that you actually can't do. So it's flow of information. It hurts the entrepreneur, and in turn it also hurts the economy as well.
All right, and I guess that's the big one, isn't it, that the economy gets a huge hit. How do people communicate then when internet is shut down?
So what's happening in Sudan at the moment is that people are using what's called virtual private networks, or VPNs. So it's a network not registered in the country. So the internet thinks you are in a different country, but you must have a certain or access to a certain amount of money, or you must have access to an international hotel. They might be using these VPNs, and really that's the only way to communicate. And that's how a lot of these people who've been leading the protests in Sudan have been managing to get the word out there to say this is what's going on in the country. That's how they've been able to share videos of what's happening in the country.
I mean, you know, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, if you have an emergency, someone is having a heart attack, if you cannot get to a phone, a person can die in these
It can happen. And also this time around, they've also extended it to SMS services as well in some parts of the continent. So you can't even SMS anybody to say, I need help, I need assistance, because there's no internet, there's no SMS, and therefore there really is very little communication.
You talked about VPN. Is there any technology that's coming through that might be able to supersede or bypass these networks and
unfortunately at the moment, no. You need the internet at the moment in order for you to communicate, and they've realized that some people figure out how to use 2G services. It's happened in Sudan in the past, where they were mapping out protest routes using 2G services, which is why I think they even go into those services as well, like SMS, for example, and that's why they go to those services to say, let's block them, let's just have the ability to just make ordinary phone calls as if it's 1957.
So if the government can say to the mobile operators, shut down, can they also say, share your records, we want to see who the troublemakers are?
Depending on the laws of the country, of course. And if it's a hardline government, as a lot of these governments that seem to block the internet are, then of course they can go to them and say share who the users of the internet are. But it's very difficult to also find out what people were discussing on the internet. What they can find out is who was communicating with who. So if the person of interest is Peter Ndoro, for example, they can find out who was communicating with Peter Ndoro. Siphumelele Zondi, let's go to him and try to break him to figure out what they were discussing.
So I'm going to put on my government hat, and I'm thinking, if this communication is going to cause unrest, is there a case for shutting down the internet for security?
Definitely not. I often think that with any technology and with any advancement that we have, it can be used for both positive and negative. And why is there unrest? In Sudan, for example, the price of bread went up by 1 Sudanese pound, which is about 29 South African cents. And people said we can't afford that. That's why the protest started. But then it became something else. So people have genuine concerns a lot of the time. Think about a car, for example. A car can be involved in an accident, but you can't then say get rid of cars because cars make it easier for us to move from one point to another just because a car can be involved in a car accident. So the good that the internet does supersedes the negative that the internet can do.
All right, my brother, thanks very much indeed for joining us and giving us an update on this disturbing trend where we're seeing more and more governments intervene and interfere, I would say, even use that word.
Yeah, interference, really.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Zondi. Thanks so much. All right, we're going to take